My boss fired me to hire his unqualified nephew despite me carrying the entire department for 5 years and bringing in 60% of company revenue. But when the company started losing millions and major clients demanded me back, I launched a competing business that destroyed them. I never thought I would be writing this from my corner office in a building I own, but here I am. My name is Alex, I'm 34 years old, and 6 months ago I was fired from a company where I'd been the top performer for 5 consecutive years. What my former boss did to me was a betrayal that changed my life forever, but not in the way he expected. This is the story of how I went from unemployed and devastated to running a multi-million-dollar competing business that destroyed the company that threw me away. I started working at Riverside Marketing Solutions 7 years ago as a junior account manager. The company specialized in digital marketing for mid-sized businesses, handling everything from social media campaigns to SEO optimization to paid advertising. When I joined, Riverside had about 30 employees and annual revenue around $8 million. My boss was the company owner, a man named Donald Hastings. Donald was 58 years old and had built Riverside from nothing over 20 years. He had a reputation in the industry as someone who was good at sales but not particularly talented at actual marketing execution. That's where employees like me came in to do the real work while he took credit with clients. I threw myself into the job from day one. I worked 60-hour weeks regularly, studying the latest marketing trends, teaching myself new platforms and strategies, and going above and beyond for every client. Within my first year, I had turned around 3 struggling accounts that were about to leave the company. My clients loved working with me because I actually delivered results instead of just making promises. By my second year, I was promoted to senior account manager. By my third year, I was managing the company's largest accounts and had brought in 5 major new clients through referrals. My book of business represented about 40% of the company's total revenue. Donald would brag to other people about having such a talented employee, but he rarely gave me direct praise or meaningful raises. Over the next 2 years, my success continued to grow. I was handling accounts worth over $5 million annually. I had developed proprietary strategies that consistently delivered 200 to 300% ROI for clients. Other employees would come to me for advice because my methods worked. I essentially became the backbone of Riverside's success. Donald's attitude toward me was complicated. He seemed to appreciate my performance when it made him look good, but he also appeared threatened by my competence. He would occasionally make comments about how I shouldn't get too comfortable or think I was irreplaceable. He would shoot down my ideas for company improvements, then implement modified versions months later and take credit. But I tolerated it because the clients valued me and my compensation, while not amazing, was decent. Everything changed about 8 months ago when Donald's sister called him asking for help. Her son Trevor, Donald's nephew, had just been fired from his 3rd marketing job in 5 years. Trevor was 29 years old and by all accounts was terrible at his job. He was lazy, entitled, and coasted by on his family connections. But Donald's sister was persistent, and family loyalty was very important to Donald. Donald called a management meeting and announced that Trevor would be joining the company as a senior account manager. Several of us exchanged worried glances. We had all heard stories about Trevor's poor reputation in the local marketing community. Bringing him on seemed like a recipe for disaster. Trevor started 2 weeks later. From day one, he acted like he owned the place. He would show up late, leave early, and spend most of his time scrolling social media instead of working. When he did interact with clients, he was condescending and made promises the company couldn't keep. Donald seemed blind to all of this, constantly making excuses for Trevor's behavior. I tried to be helpful initially. I offered to mentor Trevor and show him our systems and strategies. Trevor was dismissive and said he already knew everything about marketing and didn't need help from someone his own age. He made it clear he thought his family connection to Donald made him superior to the rest of us. Within a month, Trevor had already created problems with 2 clients through incompetence. I ended up having to fix his mistakes while he took credit for the solutions. Donald praised Trevor for how quickly he was learning, even though it was my work that saved the accounts. The situation came to a head about 6 months ago. One of my largest clients, a regional retail chain worth $800,000 annually to Riverside, was preparing to expand their marketing budget significantly. They wanted to nearly double their spend with us, which would make them $1 million account. I had been working on this expansion for months, building the strategy and presenting proposals. The client specifically requested me as their main point of contact because they trusted my judgment. But Donald had other plans. He told me he was assigning Trevor as co-lead on the account because Trevor needed experience with larger clients. I objected, explaining that the client had explicitly asked to work with me and that bringing in an inexperienced account manager could jeopardize the expansion. Donald dismissed my concerns. He said Trevor was family and needed opportunities to prove himself. He ordered me to let Trevor lead the next presentation to the client while I provided support in the background. I had a terrible feeling about this but had no choice but to comply. The presentation was a disaster. Trevor showed up unprepared, using outdated data and generic strategies I had explicitly told him would not work for this client. He was arrogant and talked over the client's questions. He made promises about results that were completely unrealistic. I tried to jump in and salvage things, but Donald had instructed me to let Trevor lead. The client was clearly unhappy. After the meeting, they sent an email saying they needed to reconsider the expansion and would be in touch. I knew we had lost the opportunity and possibly the entire account. When I brought this up to Donald, he blamed me for not supporting Trevor enough during the presentation. 2 weeks later, the client officially pulled their entire account from Riverside. They sent a detailed email explaining that Trevor's unprofessionalism and incompetence had destroyed their confidence in the company. They specifically mentioned that they would have stayed if I was still going to be their account manager, but they had no interest in working with Trevor. I forwarded this email to Donald, thinking surely this would make him realize Trevor was a liability. Instead, Donald called me into his office the next morning with a completely different take on the situation. He said the client leaving was my fault for not training Trevor properly. He accused me of sabotaging Trevor because I was jealous of his natural talent. He said I had become complacent and arrogant. I was stunned. I tried to defend myself by pointing out my track record, the fact that the client specifically blamed Trevor, and the reality that I had tried to prevent this exact situation. Donald cut me off and said he had made his decision. He was letting me go effective immediately. He said the company needed fresh energy and perspective, and I no longer fit with the direction he wanted to take things. I sat there in shock as Donald explained I would receive 2 weeks severance pay and needed to pack my belongings immediately. Security would escort me out of the building. I asked about my clients, the accounts I had built, the relationships I had cultivated. Donald said Trevor would be taking over my book of business. Walking out of that building with a box of my desk items while security watched was the most humiliating experience of my life. 7 years of dedication, of bringing in millions of dollars, of saving the company repeatedly, and I was being treated like a criminal. All because Donald valued his incompetent nephew over the employee who had carried the company. I spent the first week after being fired in a daze. My wife Jennifer was supportive but worried about our finances. We had a mortgage and 2 young kids. I had been the primary income earner. The job market for senior marketing professionals was competitive, and I worried it might take months to find something comparable. But then something interesting started happening. Clients I had worked with at Riverside began reaching out to me. They had heard I was no longer with the company and wanted to know where I landed. They said Trevor had already contacted them to introduce himself as their new account manager, and they were not impressed. Several asked if I was starting my own agency because they would hire me immediately. That's when the idea hit me. Why should I work for someone else when I had the skills, experience, and client relationships to start my own company? I had always thought about entrepreneurship but never had the push to actually do it. Getting fired turned out to be exactly the motivation I needed. Update 1. I spent 2 weeks doing market research and developing a business plan. I reached out to my network and was amazed by the response. 6 former clients said they would move their business to my new agency immediately if I could guarantee the same level of service. That represented about $3 million in annual revenue right from the start. I named my new company Summit Digital Strategies and officially launched it 3 weeks after being fired. I rented a small office space, hired 2 talented junior marketers who I had worked with at other companies, and got to work. Jennifer helped with administrative tasks while I focused on client delivery and business development. The first month was intense. I was working 80-hour weeks to set up systems, deliver for clients, and build the infrastructure needed to scale. But I loved every minute of it. For the first time in my career, I was building something that was mine. Every success belonged to me, and every decision was under my control. Word spread quickly in the local business community that I had started Summit Digital. More clients from Riverside reached out expressing interest in switching. I had to turn some away initially because I didn't have capacity yet. But that changed quickly as I hired more staff and refined our processes. Meanwhile, Riverside was apparently falling apart. I started hearing stories from former colleagues who were still there. Trevor was failing spectacularly at managing my old accounts. He would miss deadlines, deliver subpar work, and blame others for his mistakes. 3 major clients had already pulled their business within the first 2 months of my departure. Donald was supposedly in panic mode trying to stop the bleeding. He had hired 2 new account managers to try to replace me, but neither had my relationships or expertise. Clients were explicitly asking for me and being told I no longer worked there. When they learned I had started my own agency, many of them made the switch. About 2 months after I launched Summit Digital, I got a call from Riverside's CFO, a woman named Patricia who I had always respected. She said she was calling without Donald's knowledge to see if there was any way I would consider coming back. She explained that the company had lost 40% of its revenue since I left and was in serious financial trouble. Patricia said Donald was too proud to admit he made a mistake, but the board of directors was putting pressure on him to fix the situation. She offered me double my previous salary, equity in the company, and complete autonomy over my accounts. It was a generous offer that would have been tempting 6 months earlier. I politely declined. I explained that I was building something of my own and had no interest in returning to a company where I wasn't valued until it was falling apart. I also mentioned that I found it telling that Donald couldn't even make this call himself. Patricia understood and wished me well. 2 weeks after that call, I received cease and desist letters from Riverside's attorneys. They claimed I had violated non-compete agreements and was stealing their clients. This was absurd. I had never signed a non-compete agreement, which I confirmed with my own attorney. As for stealing clients, those clients had independently chosen to hire my company because Riverside could no longer meet their needs. My attorney sent a response destroying their legal arguments point by point. He also noted that if Riverside wanted to pursue litigation, we would countersue for wrongful termination and defamation. The legal threats stopped immediately after that. Meanwhile, Summit Digital was thriving. We had grown to 15 employees within 3 months. Our client list included 8 former Riverside accounts plus 7 new clients who had heard about our work through referrals. We were on track to hit $6 million in revenue in our first year, which was remarkable for a startup. The work environment at Summit was everything Riverside wasn't. We valued talent and results over politics and nepotism. We paid people well and gave them growth opportunities. We celebrated successes as a team. Employee morale was incredibly high, and that translated into better work for clients. I heard through the grapevine that Trevor had finally been demoted at Riverside after losing yet another major account through incompetence. Donald had apparently realized his nephew was a disaster but couldn't fire him because of family pressure. Trevor was moved to a junior position with no client contact, essentially making him useless overhead. About 4 months after I started Summit, Donald himself finally called me. He had Patricia's number, but this time he was making the call personally. His tone was very different from our last interaction. He said he wanted to have lunch to discuss a potential partnership between our companies. I agreed to meet him, more out of curiosity than any real interest. We met at an upscale restaurant where Donald had probably entertained clients on the company expense account for years. He looked tired and stressed in a way I had never seen before. Donald spent the first 10 minutes trying to make small talk and avoid the real reason for our meeting. Finally, he admitted that Riverside was in serious trouble. They had lost 55% of their revenue since I left. They were laying off staff and had closed one of their satellite offices. The board was considering selling the company or shutting down entirely. He said he had made a mistake letting me go. He claimed he had been under pressure from his sister about Trevor and had made an emotional decision rather than a business decision. He asked if there was any way Summit and Riverside could merge, with me running the combined operation while he focused on business development. Update 2. I let Donald finish his pitch before responding. I told him I appreciated his honesty about the situation, but I had no interest in merging with a sinking ship. I had spent 7 years building value for Riverside only to be thrown away when it suited him. Now that my absence had destroyed his company, he wanted to benefit from my success again. That wasn't going to happen. Donald's face fell. He tried to negotiate, offering me majority ownership and complete control. He even suggested he would step down entirely if that's what it took. But I wasn't interested in any scenario that involved Riverside. That company represented everything I had moved past, and I wanted nothing to do with it. I did offer Donald one piece of advice before leaving that lunch. I told him he needed to fire Trevor immediately and stop letting family obligations cloud his business judgment. I said the only way Riverside might survive was if he cut the dead weight and focused on actually delivering value to clients. Whether he took that advice or not was his problem, not mine. Over the next 2 months, Riverside's decline accelerated. 2 more major clients left after their campaigns failed to deliver results. Several of their best remaining employees quit and came to work for Summit. By this point, Riverside had gone from 30 employees down to 12. Their office space looked half empty when I drove by one day. Summit Digital, meanwhile, continued its meteoric growth. We moved into a larger office space to accommodate our expanding team of 25 employees. Our client roster had grown to 30 accounts representing over $9 million in annual revenue. We were profitable from month 3 and were reinvesting heavily in technology and talent. The local business media took notice of our success story. A regional business journal ran a feature article about Summit's rapid growth and my journey from fired employee to successful entrepreneur. The article mentioned Riverside's decline in passing, noting that several of their former clients had moved to Summit. Donald was furious about the article, but there was nothing he could do about factual reporting. More importantly, we started winning industry awards. Summit was named Best New Marketing Agency by the Regional Marketing Association. I personally won the Emerging Entrepreneur Award from the Chamber of Commerce. These recognitions brought even more clients and talent to our company. We had become the hot agency in town while Riverside became a cautionary tale. I heard through former colleagues that Donald had finally fired Trevor after he made a major error that cost Riverside their second largest remaining client. Trevor apparently threatened to sue for wrongful termination, but Donald's attorneys had documented his incompetence so thoroughly that Trevor backed down. He ended up moving to another state to escape his ruined reputation. About 6 months after I started Summit, one of Riverside's board members reached out requesting a confidential meeting. His name was Graham and he owned 20% of Riverside's shares. He explained that the board was forcing Donald to sell the company because the losses were too severe. They had a potential buyer, but the deal was contingent on retaining key client relationships. Graham asked if Summit would be interested in acquiring Riverside's remaining client list and possibly some of their staff. He said they would sell everything to us at a significant discount just to salvage something from the wreckage. It was an interesting proposition and I told him I would consider it. I discussed the opportunity with my business attorney and accountant. The numbers made sense if we could retain most of Riverside's remaining clients, which totaled about 15 accounts worth approximately $3 million annually. We could potentially double our size overnight. But there was one condition I insisted on: Donald could have no ongoing role whatsoever. I would not work with him or have him benefit beyond whatever he got from the sale of his shares. Graham said that was actually ideal from the board's perspective because they wanted a clean break from Donald's management. We negotiated for 3 weeks and eventually reached an agreement. Summit would acquire Riverside's client contracts, their remaining staff who wanted to join us, and some of their physical assets for $2.5 million. Donald would get his share of that money based on his ownership percentage, but he would have no role in Summit and would sign a non-compete preventing him from starting another marketing agency. The acquisition closed 2 months ago. It was surreal walking through Riverside's office as the new owner, seeing the place where I had spent 7 years of my life and where I had been humiliated by being fired. Now it belonged to me, and Donald was completely out of the picture. We retained 11 of Riverside's 12 remaining employees. The only one we didn't hire was someone who had been particularly nasty to me after Trevor arrived, spreading rumors that I was jealous and difficult to work with. She had to find employment elsewhere. The other employees were grateful to join a thriving company and to work for someone who actually valued talent. Most of Riverside's clients stayed with Summit after the acquisition. They were relieved to have stability and professional management again. Several specifically mentioned they were happy I was back in charge of their accounts, even if it was through a different company name. Donald tried to reach out one last time after the acquisition was finalized. He sent an email saying he hoped there were no hard feelings and that he was glad I had found success. He suggested we grab coffee sometime to catch up. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say to someone who had thrown me away and only regretted it when he faced consequences. I did hear what happened to Donald after selling Riverside. He apparently tried to start a consulting business but couldn't get clients because his reputation was destroyed. Everyone in the industry knew he had run a successful company into the ground through nepotism and poor judgment. He ended up taking a job as a sales manager at someone else's marketing firm, working for people younger than him and making a fraction of his previous income. Update 3. It has been 8 months since I was fired from Riverside, and my life has transformed in ways I never imagined possible. What started as the worst day of my career became the catalyst for the best decision I ever made. I want to share how everything turned out and provide some final thoughts on the entire experience. Summit Digital Strategies now has 45 employees across 2 office locations. We're on track to hit $15 million in revenue this year. We've been profitable every single month since month 3. I own 70% of the company, with key employees holding the remaining 30% through an equity incentive plan I created. My personal income is now 4 times what I was making at Riverside. We've won 7 industry awards in 8 months, including Agency of the Year from 2 different organizations. We've been featured in 3 national marketing publications as a case study in rapid growth and client satisfaction. Our client retention rate is 97%, which is unheard of in the marketing industry. We have a waiting list of potential clients because we refuse to grow faster than our ability to deliver excellent work. The office culture at Summit is everything I wished Riverside had been. We promote based on merit, not politics. We pay competitively and give meaningful bonuses when the company does well. We invest in employee development and encourage creative thinking. People actually want to work here, and we get dozens of unsolicited applications every week from talented marketers who want to join our team. Jennifer and I paid off our mortgage last month using my earnings from Summit. We've set up college funds for both our kids that are fully funded. We took a 2-week vacation to Europe, something we never could have afforded when I was working for Donald. The financial security and freedom are incredible. The former Riverside office space where I spent 7 years is now Summit's second location. We completely renovated it, erasing all traces of the old company. The conference room where Donald fired me is now our employee lounge with comfortable furniture and a coffee bar. There's poetic justice in transforming that space from a place of humiliation into a place where my team relaxes and celebrates successes. I've stayed in touch with several former Riverside clients who didn't come to Summit immediately but have since reached out. 3 of them switched to us within the past 2 months after trying other agencies and being disappointed. They all said they should have followed me from the beginning. Our reputation in the market is now so strong that having Summit on a resume is considered a significant credential. Donald's career never recovered. I heard he was fired from the sales manager position after only 4 months for failing to meet targets. He tried to start another marketing agency despite the non-compete, but my attorneys sent him a cease and desist that shut that down immediately. Last I heard, he was working in retail sales at a furniture store. The man who once owned a multi-million-dollar agency was now earning minimum wage plus commission. Trevor's story is similarly satisfying. After being fired from Riverside, he tried to leverage his family connection to get jobs at other marketing firms. But his reputation preceded him. No reputable agency would hire him once they checked references. He eventually gave up on marketing entirely and last I heard was managing a fast food restaurant in another state. His entitlement and laziness caught up with him in a way that family connections couldn't fix. The most unexpected outcome has been the speaking opportunities that came from my story. I've been invited to speak at 3 different business conferences about building a company from scratch, overcoming professional setbacks, and the importance of valuing talent over politics. These speaking engagements have led to even more business for Summit and have raised my profile in the industry significantly. I recently did a podcast interview where I was asked about Donald firing me. The host wanted to know if I harbored any resentment or wished things had been different. I answered honestly that while the firing was devastating at the time, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I never would have started Summit if I had stayed comfortable at Riverside. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. I also started mentoring young marketers who are just starting their careers. Several of them have faced situations similar to what I experienced, working for bosses who take credit for their work or who play favorites. I try to encourage them to know their worth and not settle for companies that don't value talent. Life is too short to work for people like Donald. My relationship with Jennifer has also grown stronger through this experience. She supported me during the terrifying early days of Summit when success wasn't guaranteed. She believed in me when I was doubting myself. Now she works part-time as Summit's operations manager, using her business degree to help streamline our systems. Building this company together has been an incredible bonding experience. We've started planning to open a third location in a neighboring city within the next year. We've identified a gap in that market for high-quality digital marketing services. With our track record and reputation, we're confident we can replicate our success there. Within 3 years, I want Summit to be the dominant marketing agency in the entire region. I did have one interesting encounter with Donald about a month ago. I was having lunch at a restaurant when I saw him walk in with what appeared to be his wife. Our eyes met across the room. He looked away quickly, his face flushing with embarrassment. I felt nothing seeing him. Not anger, not satisfaction, just indifference. He had become irrelevant to my life. Part of me wonders if Donald has any idea how badly he miscalculated. He had a talented employee who was generating millions in revenue and making him look good. All he had to do was appreciate that employee and not let nepotism cloud his judgment. Instead, he chose family loyalty over business sense and lost everything as a result. The lesson I learned from this experience is that being fired can be a blessing in disguise. It forces you to reevaluate your path and consider opportunities you might otherwise ignore. It reveals who your real supporters are and tests your resilience. Most importantly, it can be the push you need to take control of your career rather than letting others control it for you. I also learned that loyalty to employees matters enormously. At Summit, I make sure everyone knows they're valued. I give credit where it's due. I promote talented people and pay them well. I don't tolerate nepotism or politics. As a result, my team is loyal and motivated in ways Riverside's team never was. That translates directly into better client outcomes and company success. The irony is that Donald thought he was doing Trevor a favor by giving him opportunities at my expense. But he actually hurt Trevor by putting him in positions he wasn't qualified for and letting him fail publicly. Real leadership means being honest about people's abilities and helping them develop rather than just handing them opportunities they can't handle. Donald failed Trevor almost as badly as he failed me. I keep a framed photo in my office from the day Summit officially acquired Riverside's assets. It shows me signing the paperwork with my attorney and accountant. That photo represents the complete reversal of fortune from the day Donald fired me. It reminds me that setbacks are temporary if you have the skills and determination to overcome them. To anyone reading this who has been fired unfairly or feels undervalued at work, my advice is simple. Know your worth, document your achievements, build your network, and don't be afraid to bet on yourself. The best revenge isn't getting even or harboring resentment. The best revenge is building something so successful that your former employer's mistakes become obvious to everyone. Donald gave me the greatest gift possible when he fired me, even though that wasn't his intention. He freed me from a situation where I was undervalued and gave me the motivation to prove my worth independently. Summit Digital Strategies exists because Donald made the catastrophic mistake of valuing his incompetent nephew over his best employee. His loss became my gain in the most spectacular way possible. Looking back, I'm grateful for how everything unfolded. Yes, being fired was humiliating and scary. But staying at Riverside would have meant continued frustration, limited growth, and watching someone else take credit for my work. Now I run a company that bears my vision, values my team, and delivers exceptional results for clients. I answer to no one but myself and my employees. The company I built from nothing is now worth over $20 million based on recent valuations. The company Donald spent 20 years building is gone, destroyed by his own poor judgment within 6 months of firing me. That contrast tells you everything you need to know about the importance of valuing talent over politics. I'm closing this chapter of my story now. Donald and Riverside are firmly in my past. My future is Summit Digital Strategies, my incredible team, and the clients who trust us with their business. To anyone who has faced similar betrayals, remember that your value doesn't depend on one person's opinion of you. Sometimes the people who fire you are doing you a favor by forcing you to reach your full potential elsewhere. The best part of this entire experience is knowing that every day I wake up and build something that is mine. Every success belongs to me and my team. Every decision reflects my values. And every client relationship is built on trust and results rather than politics and nepotism. That freedom is worth more than any salary Donald ever could have paid me. Success truly is the best revenge, and Summit's success has been sweeter than I ever imagined possible.